Okay. Yeah, it seems Donnie is having a few technical glitches. So I'm going to take over. So I would just like to welcome you all to the um ELASA slash Bosun webinar, which is proudly brought to you by Bosun. And our speaker, Gert van Wyk, is the head of marketing of the Bosun Group of companies. The Bosun Group includes paving manufacturers, Bosun and Smartstone, and Gert has been involved with the NCMA, International Segmented Paving Industry Association, for many years, where he attended numerous seminars, formal training courses, and more. So I am going to stop sharing my screen now and allow Gert to share his screen and share his wisdom with us.
Thank you, Aline. I don't think it's so much wisdom, but let's try. I'm just going to share my presentation.
Okay, we can see it. You just need to present
Yeah.
mode.
Just get that. There we go. Right, so can everybody see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So just a few formalities. Firstly, if your name is Gert, one of the challenges in life is English. So please bear with me today. The second thing is it's always difficult. These online presentations can be really painstakingly boring. There's no other word. So I'm going to try and make it as interesting as possible, but also as interactive as possible. I'm going to give a lot of opportunities to ask questions, and please do so. I think, yeah, it's really important that we engage with one another. The last thing that I just want to mention is that it's not going to be a once-off thing. We see it as a program. So just a little bit of background. ELASA approached us and asked if we want to do a sponsorship. And we thought, the normal kind of sponsorship thing is so dead. It's just, you don't want to be bombarded with our logos and stuff all the time. And for us, what do we actually get out of the whole thing? So what we decided to do is I went to see Donnie Rebel and we had a long discussion, and there were two needs. On the one hand, you as landscape architects need to get CPD points, and seemingly that's quite a struggle. So we can help with that with events like this. And then secondly, from our side, I've been fortunate enough with Bosun to travel the world and meet paving contractors in other countries, paving manufacturers, paving designers, and we learned so much. And essentially, what we want to do is just share with you what we've learned. This Concrete and Masonry and Hardscapes Association, the logo that you see on the screen here, is an amazing organization. One thing about the Americans, if they do something, they do it properly. They've got training courses, they've got online training courses, they've got content, and we essentially just latch onto their content, and that's what we just put a little bit of a South African twist on it. But that's what we're here for. So yeah, that's the long and short of the introduction. And the next thing that I don't know if I need to apologize in advance. I think we've got all different kinds of architects here today. We've got young ones, we've got more experienced architects, we've got inexperienced architects. So what we're going to try and do, or what I'm going to try and do today, is just kind of go to the real basics. It's like 5 core principles. We're going to touch on them briefly, and then we're going to decide together, what's the need. And the intention is not for me to do this training like I said, it's a program. We want to do 3 of these a year, for instance. And the intention is to get international speakers, to make it exciting, to make it really worthwhile to attend. So please understand that it's not Bosun trying to, do training here. And then also, please understand that we're going to start with the really basic. So the first thing is, what is a pavement? And the answer is on the screen here. It's the opposite of what we're seeing on the screen here. A pavement is a hard surface, an even hard surface that's easy for people to walk or drive on. It's a mud stopper in the simplest form. Now, the concept of segmented paving is not new. It's more than 2,000 years old, and the Romans made it their own. The Romans paved with segmented paving, paved thousands of kilometers of roads in Europe 2,000 years ago, and many of those examples are still functional today. And that's the absolute beauty of segmented paving, is the principles since Roman times are exactly the same as what we do today, or what we're supposed to do today. And the other beautiful thing is the way they install paving in America or Japan or Germany or England or Italy, wherever, is exactly the same as the Romans did it 2,000 years ago, and it's still the same thing that we're doing today. So it's not rocket science. It's not. So we don't want to make you paving installers, but we thought this is a good starting point for us as industry to just understand the basic principles of segmented paving, because that will make it easier for us on site to communicate with contractors, to understand possible problems that we might encounter, etc., etc. At this point in time, are there any comments or questions at this point? So, Eileen, I can't see all the people, so if you can perhaps please just help. If there is a hand, please just interrupt me.
Yes, I will. At the moment, there's no hands and no questions in the chat.
100%. Right. So this is a pavement I came across in Germany, in Dresden. So simple, yet so beautiful and so perfectly installed. And that's what you want. A pavement that's installed correctly can last 1,000 years, can last 2,000 years, like the Romans showed us. I'm not going to spend a hell of a lot of time on this slide. I think all of us have seen this thing in one or other shape or form somewhere in our careers. But this is the overriding principle when it comes to segmented paving or block paving. And if there's one thing we would wish that you could take with you from today, only one thing, it would be this. And this is that the pavers, doesn't matter what the market is, what the manufacturers tell you, the pavers are merely a component of a bigger system. The pavers alone means absolutely nothing. What's really important is with segmented paving, you need a system, and this system needs to work together, and this system allows weight or loads to be transferred from the pavers into the layers underneath the paving. So like I said, it's quite a mouthful. I'm not going to spend more time on this slide, but this is really the essence of it. we must understand that it's not about the paving. It's not one thing. It is a combination of factors that work together that makes segmented paving do the job for us as human beings. So the first component, I said there's only 5, and it's literally as simple as that. Now, the first component that we must consider is a foundation. So none of us would build a house without a foundation. I think none of us would even attempt that. We all know, I mean, since we've been in primary school, or even before that, kindergarten, we learned about the 3 piglets and the importance of a foundation. And with paving, because you can't see it and because people don't necessarily understand it, many times the foundation of our pavements are not what they are supposed to be. Now, I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm not going to make a whole thing out of it. I just want to share the principle. So with a foundation, there's essentially just 3 things that's important. So the first thing is, here we've got 2 pictures. On the left-hand side, we're showing topsoil, and on the right-hand side, we're showing a tarmac pavement, but the principles are the same. Their foundation on the right-hand side is an inorganic material. Now, who can help me? Why is it better to use an inorganic material than organic material when it comes to the foundation of a pavement? So anybody that can... Right, so no hands. So with...
No hands.
Okay,
Nothing
so
in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, so with organic material under paving, if you're trying to... the biggest problem is organic. There's organic matter in the material. So you've got little pieces of tree roots or grass roots or earthworms. There's all kinds of organic matter in topsoil. And if you're going to now compact topsoil and think that this is going to be a sufficient foundation for your pavement, it's not going to be, because what's going to happen, this organic matter in time, perhaps not in a year's time, perhaps not even 2 years, but at some point it's going to decompose. And when it decomposes, there's just going to be gas left there. And then as soon as you traffic it, there's going to be settlement. So using an inorganic material for your base or foundation is really, really important. That's just the first thing that's important. The second thing is this inorganic material must be made up of different sized particle material. So what that means is it just fills all the nooks and crannies. It just fills everything, and it allows this base to become really, really hard. And then in conjunction with this second principle is the third principle. It needs to be compacted in order to get rid of all that air pockets, and it will allow the particles to shift into place, creating a really solid, hard surface underneath your paving. And that really provides the strength for your paving. And it is something, like I say, in South Africa, sometimes a foundation is overlooked. We understand that there's always budget constraints, etc., etc. But for property owners who want their paving to serve them for a lifetime, this is the first thing that we have to do. We have to make sure that our foundation is solid. Now, foundation of a paving foundation, many times it's very technical. Many times we have to consult engineers to help us with the design of it. But in principle, there should always be a foundation. Without a foundation, we're playing with fire. Something that we discovered quite recently, and this is something we simply in South Africa, we didn't know. We were unaware of it. In South Africa, I don't know who of you ever encountered this discoloration of your paving, and you complained with the manufacturer, and the manufacturer said, no, this is black efflorescence. So that's the one name. The other people call it desert varnish. Others call it black attack. A few names for it. And I don't want to say it's a common problem in South Africa, but it happens. Here's a site quite close to us in Midrand in Waterfall. That area is well known for underground water and problems associated with underground water. Now, what we discovered is we asked our international associates, and we really tried to understand this issue. What causes this discoloration, this black, unexplainable discoloration that happens? Just one site it happens, the next site it doesn't. It's one area on a site it happens, on another area it doesn't happen. You could uplift that pavers. The worst thing is you can uplift, replace the paving. In a year's time, it's going to look exactly the same. Then we realized one of the things, because it's kind of non-negotiable to use an inorganic base or inorganic foundation overseas, they don't have this problem. So that base, the inorganic base, also creates a barrier between the soil, because remember, in soil, there's all kinds of minerals, there's all kinds of things, and we know that those things can make their way up into the concrete because the concrete's porous. So with rain and sunshine and heat and all kinds of that stuff is all absorbed into the pavers, and eventually it discolors the pavers, and this is what you get then, this unexplainable black attack or black efflorescence that only us in South Africa encountered. And we kind of figured out that this is directly related to the fact that many times in South Africa, we don't use an inorganic foundation. Okay, so this is just an interesting thing. And going back to the Romans, what did they do? Here's a drawing of an installation of segmented paving. You can clearly see there is a base right on the underneath the bedding layer. There is an aggregate base layer that's just provides the strength and the longevity for the pavement. Any questions around the foundation of what a solid foundation of a pavement means? Or any comments around the material to be used? No questions?
No questions in the chat, and no hands are up.
Okay. So what happens if you've got an insufficient base? So this picture was taken at my own house, my own pavers that I bought on my staff discount at Bosun. And this is what happens. You can see indentation, clever word, I suppose, rutting, and the pavers collapsed or sunk, even if it just starts off like this, even if it is just this little indentation in the pavement. The problem is that one thing leads to the next. So here we've got it. That little indentation is going to gather water. Water is going to stand there. Water is going to start draining into my pavement. And that's going to create all kinds of other problems, all kinds of associated little issues that will, and where it all originated is just that they didn't install a proper foundation in this pavement of mine. So here's a lovely picture of pavement failing horribly. And we can, it is clear this base is, it's again, non-existent base, totally under-designed. If you drive forklifts on segmented paving, you have to consult an engineer. There must be some form of design underneath your pavers. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay, so this now flows into the next aspect. So I said there's only 5. So the second thing, when we think paving, the second really, really important thing, simple thing that we just need to understand is drainage. And drainage has 2 sides to it. There needs to be drainage above ground. So your paving needs to allow water to go somewhere. We can't have water standing on paving. That's going to create problems in the long term, as discussed previously. The second side is we must also think of water that might make its way into our pavement. That needs to get out as well. So that is the 2 very important, that's the 2 things that we have to keep in account is paving or water must run off firstly, and then secondly, if there is any accidental water, we must be able to deal with that in some way. And again, luckily, it's not rocket science. It is not. It's not. It's not difficult. So before I come to the solution, let me just talk about things that will stem from water infiltrating your paved system. So both of these pictures are related to the drainage of water that might have infiltrated your pavement. So on the right-hand side, and I think all of us have seen something like this, you can clearly see where the cars drive. It's almost like a sand path on top of the paving. Now that is what they call pumping. So what happens is water infiltrates the paving or the paved surface. That water's got nowhere to go. It just sits there in the bedding material underneath the paving. And then as cars drive over it, it literally pumps out of the paved surface. And with it, it also takes the stuff between the pavers. And then it just, one thing leads to another. Next thing you're going to hear is clack, 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 clack. Next thing you know, you have to replace, you need to pick up, repave the whole thing. And it all just started with, number one, water. Perhaps they didn't allow for enough runoff. Secondly, they didn't think about what's underneath the paving. On the left-hand side, here's another, this is just a residential example. So something that we need to keep in mind, if we look at this picture on the left-hand side, these pavers, it's a wet cast paver. They quite, if you can see, it's quite discolored as well. Problem there was the retaining wall on the left-hand side, right on the left of the picture. There's this retaining wall. What happens to the water? All the water behind this wall drains behind the wall. Then the first easiest place for it to escape is underneath the paving. And that water then just sits underneath the paving and eventually with the sun, makes its way into the pavers, causing discoloration, because that water takes with it whatever's in the soil underneath, whatever minerals, whatever, and that ends up permanently in your pavers. Now, the million-dollar question is now, okay, so how do we deal with it? So, firstly, and like I said, it's not rocket science. Firstly, your bedding material. Now, I'm possibly jumping the gun here because we haven't talked about the bedding materials, but we will a little bit later on. But the bedding material needs to allow drainage. So the sand that you use, or the mortar that you use, on the left-hand side, they use the mortar, on the right-hand side, they use the sand, must drain. It must be a material that allows water through. So in simple language, something like a river sand will work very well for your bedding. Something like a river sand-based mortar will work really well, but something like building sand or plaster sand is not going to work well because it doesn't allow water to drain freely through the layers underneath and make its way out of the system. And then obviously the logical first step is there has to be falls. In the design of the paving, you must always think, where's the water going to go? That's key. If you have to visualize, because if water stands on paving, it is a disaster. It's the biggest enemy of any pavement is water. Right. So the next thing, the next component is, again, something not rocket science. So if I'm going to jump back to our Roman picture, so we can see on the sides of our Roman road here, there's big pieces of rock lining the road, keeping all these pavers that's packed tightly together. And that's what we need to do with our modern paving today as well. We need to, whatever pavement we construct, it is so crucial to keep it together, because if you don't keep it together, like tightly together, it's going to start moving apart. And again, one thing leads to the next. It's going to be water infiltrating. That water is going to cause other problems. Problem compounded. And what do we do in South Africa many times? Example on the right, just a little trowel, mortar, little triangle. That stuff always breaks. It's never strong enough. It's bound to fail. So we have to ensure that the edges of our pavement contains the whole system. And we're not going to go into details now. There's other details that we can talk hours about this, and steep slopes need more containment but just for the purposes of today, just laying this foundation for us. In principle, we must ensure that you've got something really, really strong that keeps your pavement together. At this point, any comments or questions?
I don't see anything, Gert.
Well, can I ask, like I said, it is really, really difficult, these online things. If you're in person, at least you can see people's body language. You can see if you're on the right track, or if they perhaps what I'm doing today is too elementary. I'm not sure. Is there any, are we on the right track? Is this stuff that you want to hear, or are you yawning? Because we can move on. We can go on to more complex things.
I think everybody's interested. We're getting a lot of thumbs ups.
Okay, cool. Right. So as long as, I don't want to, like I said in the beginning, the last thing I want to do is to bore you. So if you're getting value, let me carry on. And like I said, today is like really, really the basics. And we want to grow on this because that's the only way that we're going to develop this industry of ours. And I say our industry. We're part of the same industry, landscape. You interested in the landscape. We interested in giving you products to create beautiful landscapes. And together, we're in the same boat. If people's going to start saying, no, but this segmented paving doesn't work, and it's already started happening. People saying, no, let's just go for asphalt because this paving never works. Nonsense. This paving works. It's just simple little things that we need to change and ensure in order to make sure that it does its job. In the 80s, very interesting, in the 80s, South Africa was seen as one of the leading experts in the field of segmented paving. We had international conferences on paving presented here in Sun City, specifically the International, whatever it was, association did their annual or biannual conference here because of all the expertise here. Unfortunately, things didn't progress in our industry as it should have. And this is where we are now. So now we're latching on. In the 80s, we were far more advanced than the Americans. Now we're looking at the Americans and they're giving us tips. So it's just how it goes. Anyway, so this is then what happens. So once you don't have a solid edge, or if your edge breaks, naturally, especially if you've got vehicular traffic, as cars going to drive, these pavers going to have stresses on them. It's going to push them apart, and we're going to learn about interlock just now. And this is breaking essentially interlock. So that's why it's so crucial to keep your paving together, because then you're going to have something like this is not going to happen. And again, going back one step, the problem with this now is now it rains, now the water goes into the paved system. Now you've got cars driving over it, and this now creates that other problem that we talked about earlier, the pumping of the bedding material. So we can see it's all, it's just 5 things, but they all work together, and one thing fails, and then the next, and then the next, and then it's just a complete failure. Okay, so as promised, it brings us to interlock. Now, in South Africa,
sorry.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just a couple of comments that have come through.
Yes.
Monica says, you're doing very well, Gert. Bring us back to the basics, and you're welcome to put some complex stuff in. Mitha says she appreciates the topic. Thank you. And Monica also said paving contractors need to see this and hear this too, especially the council.
Agreed. So I think that is our aim, is the more consciousness we can create around just the basic principles, the more we can start sharing it. Unfortunately, the sad reality is in South Africa, there's no place for somebody to go and learn to install paving. If you want to become a bricklayer, you can still go to places and you can learn to lay bricks. There's not a single institution in South Africa that offers any kind of course in the installation of paving. Now, I think it's related to the fact, if there's a paving failure, it's not fatal. it's, you know, the things that I showed you, it won't cost people's lives. If a wall of a house falls over and people die, then it's going to be, you know, we've had examples recently in George, etc. You know, it's a big thing. It sadly costs people's lives. But because of paving failure is never fatal, I think, you know, that was the starting point. But that's the problem. The solution is we need to work together. We need to come together as an industry and find ways to educate and help our contractors to do the right thing. But then also, I think the most important part of it is we all know that the property owners don't want to spend money. Property owners are, you know, they want to do it as cheaply as possible and maximize the profits, etc., etc. So that's probably the starting point. We have to explain to these people in the QSs, and everybody in our industry must be on the same page that, listen, there's two ways. We can do it cheap, but your life expectancy is going to be X. If we do it like this, it's going to cost this much more. Life expectancy Y, and the comparison, redoing it, all the issues associated with that. I think it's not difficult to see which one is better. Okay, but now we're getting to a little bit more technical, and this is interlock. Now, in South Africa, we associate interlock with engineers, and there's these zigzag pavers, these things that architects don't like. You know, the interlocker, engineers love them. That's all an engineer wants to do is 80mm interlockers in a herringbone pattern. That's a pavement engineer's favorite thing to write in a spec. Now, yes, this shape contributes a little bit to a specific type of interlock, but interlock is the biggest interlock is created by your edges and then with your material that you put between your pavers. That friction, that interlock, that is much more important than the shape of the pavers. There's certain countries, the UK, for instance, they've got very few of these interlocking shaped pavers because they will tell you interlock is not about the paver shape. It's about this vertical friction between the pavers that keeps everything in place. So that's an interesting concept, and that is something, you know, slightly technical, but it's just good for us to understand as landscape architects, just to understand that, you know, possibly keeping the pavers together and jointing it with a good grouting material will give you a better outcome than just using interlockers. Just something to think about. Now, if we lose sand between pavers, what generally happens, the first thing that happens is this, what you can see here, spalling. The edges start chipping, especially if there's vehicular traffic. It's related, it's directly related to the sand or the grouting material between the pavers, because this friction prevents movement. If you lose that sand between your pavers is going to start buckling slightly, just ever so slightly, and that slight movement is going to cause edges to break. And I'm sure you must have seen in your careers, you must have seen things similar to this, where why are the edges breaking? This is inferior paving, but actually what's failing is the material or the grouting between the pavers. Now, I'm taking you back now. In Europe, they sell paving jointing sand in bags, like this at the hardware store. In theory, the type of sand, or not in theory, the type of sand is really, really important. In South Africa, as a rule, we use plaster sand as grouting material. It works, but it's not ideal. The only message that I want to leave with you is, if plaster sand doesn't work on a specific site, there are other options. Sand that will create better friction between your pavers and that will stay in your joints better, because that is a common complaint. Now, the sand between my joints are washing out. We've got many solutions for that. So that might be a topic for next one of these presentations in our program. Okay, so here's a typical example of a pavement that lost its interlock. Then water started infiltrating. We can see what the discoloration on the pavers there. And we've all encountered it. We've all driven over paving with our motor cars, and we heard this clack, 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 clack. This is exactly what happened. And the starting point is this: you lose your grouting, and probably before that there was some issue with the edges, that there was a little bit of movement, and then once there's a bit of movement, then you can imagine, as soon as it starts opening up, all that stuff that used or should be between your pavers then just falls through into your bed.
Sorry, Gert, for interrupting. I do have a question.
Yes.
Elise is saying, sorry if she missed it just now. What sand would you then recommend instead of plaster sand that is available in South Africa? And then would it make sense to regrout paving from time to time? Sorry if it's a stupid question.
No, not at all. It is a very relevant question. So now I need to be careful because I don't want to promote okay, so we've got this little, in our group, we've got this little company called Creetsol, and one of the things that they supply is all kinds of grouting materials, all kinds of specialized grouting materials. And they sourced a sand, and it's quite simple. You don't have to get it from them. It is a silica sand. So the reason why silica sand is better, and the reason why they use it overseas as well, silica sand it's not a round sand. If you think plaster sand, it's a round, soft sand. The silica sand's got edges, so it just creates, you can imagine if you take sand between your fingers and you wrap your fingers, that's what you want, as much as possible friction. So this silica sand creates the friction, but the important part is it has to be the right grading analysis. And what we could do is, I think it warrants, perhaps we will in future, and that won't be me, I'll get somebody from the UK to do a little thing for us on grouting and the importance of grouting and how to maintain your grouting and what to do in instances where you've got problems, because grouting is such a small part of the system. It's such an inexpensive part of your system. It's so stupid to allow that to create a complete failure. So we'll definitely touch on grouting as a specific topic with an expert that I've got in mind in future. So yeah, so that the next thing also related. So we said there's only 5 things. So the past two and this one is so closely related, it's almost the same principle, and that is laying pattern. Now, uh, as we mentioned, engineers love herringbone pattern. It's the one on the right-hand side here, but I specifically chose this picture to show you that if you interrupt this pattern, it will also have its problems. It will also have issues. So a herringbone is not necessarily always, it's just magically going to work. The stuff around it needs to work as well. A pattern which is a really risky when it comes to paving is this square bond pattern that we can see on the left here. It's not that we can't do it or that you can't do it. It just, there's a lot of risk when it comes to paving that's installed flexibly. Remember, these pavers are laid and um, uh, they're grouted with sand. They're installed on sand because that's the most cost-effective way. But the risk that you've got, there's so much opportunity for a little bit of movement. So this was on a traffic circle somewhere. So, imagine, taxi just drives over it, so brakes on it. There's a huge risk of movement when it comes to this square bond pattern. If we look on the right-hand side, the herringbone pattern definitely creates more points of interlock. It is just more solid. But we do also understand that, herringbone can be really boring and there's not much you can do in terms of design. Stretcher bond is also a good option. A stretcher bond, and I'll show you now the secret of a stretcher bond. If you've got traffic, this is the same site. You can see it's the same house, the same big bucky. The picture on the left, the paving looks absolutely fine. The picture on the right, the paving looks really terrible. So we can see what happened here. So as the bucky drives into the house, it's straight in and it is against the continuous lines of the paving. On the right-hand side, the bucky drives in the direction of the continuous lines, and that creates movement. Eventually, just imagine if that big thing breaks a little bit, that pressure there's definitely going to be movement. Yeah, it's also bigger pavers. So what happens is that one tire ends up on one of these pavers, and that it just shifts the whole thing. So it's just something that we have to bear in mind is laying pattern. If there is vehicular traffic, yes, first choice is always herringbone. But if you want to use a stretcher bond, just make sure that it is that the continuous grouting lines are against the traffic or is 90 degrees with your vehicular traffic. It is just going to make it, it's going to prevent movement of your pavers. Right, the last aspect, and again, this is so interwoven. It is, it's like paving manufacturers will tell you, like tile manufacturers, like brick manufacturers, will tell you it is impossible to consistently manufacture pavers that's exactly the same size. In fact, the South African national standard, and not only the South African, the American, the German, whatever national standard, specifies a 3 millimeter up or down allowance. So if we say a paver is 60 mils thick, it might be 63 mils, it might be 57 mils. That means two pavers, two neighbors can be 6 millimeters bigger or thicker or thinner. It's a big number. Now, how on earth do you expect us to install pavers then? That's what the contractor would ask. The question or the answer to that is quite simple. This is how the Romans did it. This is how everybody does it. Is you install it on sand. Something that really, really helps is if the sand's moist, like we can see on the left-hand side there. And then you've got your plate compactor machine that just with force vibrates your pavers into this bedding. Because the plate is bigger than the pavers themselves, it allows for paver A and all its neighbors to sink into the sand equally. And that is the secret to overcoming this problem. Now, we see this on site often. The problem here is installers don't use the right sand. They use too little sand, and their sand is bone dry. And they will say it's impossible. You can't have moist sand, and yes, it is difficult. Yes, it does cost money, but this is how it's supposed to be done. Moist sand, compact your pavers while the sand's moist, so that the pavers can sink into the sand evenly. Another thing in South Africa, and we're almost done. I know we're on time. We just started a little bit late with the technical difficulties. Something that we never do in South Africa, but something that's constantly done, consistently elsewhere in the world, is the screeding of your sand. So we can see, if you just screed your sand, what a nice, even laying surface it creates for your pavers to be packed. And you can imagine then going over with the compactor, how those pavers going to sink evenly into the sand. Another thing with the screeding is you're ensuring that your sand's of an even thickness. So there's no risk of pavers settling more in one area compared to another area, etc., etc. It's all the same thickness sand. It's going to settle evenly. So this area is probably our biggest challenge in South Africa, because yes, it involves a little bit of labor. It involves a little bit of cook. We have to, do things slower and do more preparation. But yes, if we can get this right, to screed our bedding material, to ensure our bedding material is slightly moist and not bone dry, because what people do is they pack pavers for the whole week, and then they come with the plate compactor, and there's no give in the sand. Then it's bone dry. It's just your pavers are not going to settle into your sand, and that's the whole purpose of bedding, is to allow your pavers to settle into the sand evenly. Right, so that is Mev. Do you know the answer of this question? Perhaps we should leave this for next time. Should I quickly answer it? What do you think about plastic under paving? So after hearing these 5 principles today, what is your comment about plastic under paving?
If anybody would like to unmute and just quickly answer that. Megan?
I
Yes.
reckon not. I
You
say
say
no
no.
because it makes it less pervious. Makes it
100%.
impermeable.
100%.
Metha says it does not seem necessary.
Definitely not necessary. It creates problems because we said earlier, one of the things that's really important is that water that might infiltrate your paving must be allowed to drain. Now, if you're going to put plastic in, that water is not going to have anywhere to drain. So it creates huge structural problems. And the worst part of it is that it doesn't help for weeds in any case, because weeds come from the top. It comes from seeds and bird droppings and what. It doesn't grow from the bottom. So the only way to get rid of weeds or to prevent weeds is to sweep your paving regularly. Disrupt the weeds. Don't give them time to germinate. So plastic under paving is a no-no. It just creates so much. Commercially, generally, we don't have that problem, but residentially, I can't tell you of the number of complaints we're getting. And then we get to site, and it's all kinds of complaints. No, the paving's discoloring and it's different. We get to site, and like this site, you just see, first thing that you see is there's plastic underneath. Creates more problems than anything else. Anyway, so that is our first session done and dusted. Let me just escape here. Stop sharing. I really hope you found it useful today. As I mentioned, this is part of a bigger program that we want to grow and just educate ourselves in order to make our landscape market a better place for all of us. Any closing remarks or any other questions by anybody? Any suggestions of what we might have to do in future? Any specific topics that you would like to have covered in this program? You also don't have to comment right now. If there is anything, just contact Ilasa, tell them what needs you've got, and we'll try and address it.
Kat, I think what I will do is tomorrow morning I will send out a MS Forms, sort of just a bit of a survey to get some feedback on today's webinar, and then also have a section for suggested topics for future events. And then I will share that feedback with you once we get that all in. But I think on behalf of Ilasa and behalf of everybody who did attend, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Gert, for your wisdom. I am not in the Ilasa space. I'm an event manager, but I have certainly learned a lot today about paving. So thank you so much for your time, and to Bosun for sponsoring this event for us. So we look forward to the next one, and we will see you all again soon.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Gert.
Thank you, Gert.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, thank you, Aline. We'll chat tomorrow.
Yes, absolute pleasure. And thank you so much, Gert. Really do
Okay.
appreciate it. I will set up something this evening that I'll send out to everybody who's attended.
Okay.
And whatever feedback I get, I will then share with
Perfect.
yourself
Thank
and
you.
Donnie. We can take it
Thanks
from
so
there. But
much.
it was great meeting you, even though it is
Cool.
over a computer.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I'm going to leave the meeting open a bit. I see people are making comments, so I'll put those in to consideration as well.
Yeah, look, I see the heat island effect. That's one of the things on our radar. Right. Cheers,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye.
Bye.